All right, looks like we are live again. My apologies. That's just a technical glitch. I just wanted to make sure. It looks like we are live now on YouTube as well. I know there's a ton of people watching, the people that you know, Migz, and that's why I wanted to make sure we were able to get them connected. So my apologies for that. I hope everybody's watching still, and we'll kind of go from there. But Migz, yeah, we were just talking about your life story the last 20 years, and I think you were kind of winding it down, but just in terms of, we're going to talk about this later, but mentorships and everything else that kind of led you away from, not necessarily away. I don't necessarily like that word because I was a teacher too, but away from education and into pursuing dreams and goals and things like that. So what years are we talking when you left teaching? 2013?
2013 was my last school year.
And that was at Concordia in Shanghai?
Yeah, that's Concordia.
Okay. And then where'd you go from there?
So from there, I wanted to join the family business, my wife's family business. Manufacture tools, and that was a great experience in business for me because I'd never had other than banking right after college, right? But it's completely different because you're learning right there from the CEO, and you're learning the tricks of the trade, before any of the new tricks of the trade came, before social media, before any kind of marketing that you see these days. You have one old school sales guy knock on the door, make a sale. I mean, that was super beneficial for me. And like I said, I follow these, these mentors, Richard Branson and even Jack Ma and all these guys, just the value in, sitting beside or being able to observe, the figurehead of the company is huge, right? Because you see how they make the movements, how they come to the decisions they make, some of the challenges they face, and even the failures, right? Which is all part of it when you're starting something.
Oh, I think it's a huge part, right? You got to fail to succeed sometimes. So I totally get that. Yeah, go for it.
And I was fortunate to do that. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd have, enough confidence doing what I'm doing at that age. I was 39 when I started that clothing company. Have that confidence to say, yeah, I can jump in with the Nikes and the Adidas's. I mean, who would think, right, to do that, especially being self-funded and being helped out by old friends and guys from your network, right? So just fortunate to have that. And again, that's when it just spiraled, and all these little twists and turns just developed from there. And here we are in 2020, and the plate's full, right? The plate's full, and I'm happy to say too, a lot of that, part of that, a huge chunk of that plate is dedicated to my kids. And all four of them, right? One of them who lives in Hong Kong, was a big proponent to why we moved back from California to Shanghai, right? So we're there, we're in California camping out, waiting for this, COVID to die down so we can get back and get back to work, and start traveling again. But again, this, the last 4 or 5 months we've been here has changed a lot, has given not just me, but everybody perspective as to why we're doing things, right? And if it was just to make money, it'd be a different story. It never is about that. And, our parents, showed us that that's not what brings happiness. That's really not what success is, because as we know, more money brings more problems. And I think so, but no, for sure. Like I said, it's been a fantastic, run for me in terms of business, and I'm still going at it, but still a lot of twists and turns, a lot of plot, changes, but a lot of people along the way with good hearts and just, willing to listen, willing to help out. Right.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I can't wait to dive into, all your adventures since over the last 20 years too, because I have so many questions. But the number one question I have right now, man, and it's probably coming. It's the epiphany of TCK questions, right? So you're born in the Philippines, in Manila. You ended up in Hong Kong at 2 years old. You ended up graduating from Taipei American School. Then you ended up back in the Philippines, and then from there you ended up in China. Am I right so far? No, Taipei, right? So Taipei and then China,
and then back to the Philippines.
Back to the Philippines, and then stateside, yeah.
And then China.
Back to China. So you're leading me into this question, but where do you feel to this day? I mean, what's home, man? Where is home? What do you consider home?
It's always where family is, right?
Yeah.
tried and true. It's like, even if you've never lived there, growing up in Hong Kong, we knew home was the Philippines,
Yeah.
right? Our grandparents, everybody was there. And when you go home, you just feel like it's home. You know the difference. And yeah, that's a big TCK question. Like, you don't know where home is. That's where it was, for us. And I think we have our parents to thank for that, right? Because they were adamant about making sure that we understood our roots and knew who we were. So again, home for me is the Philippines. But in terms of being able to move and find a place and call it home, I could do that as well, right? I think being an international student as my brothers, just super adaptable to any kind of situation, any kind of circumstance, and just giving us that confidence to just be anywhere and find and call that home, even if it's just temporary. So our last move to the U.S. was with 10 suitcases. We moved back to Shanghai, suitcases, So that's what our moves are. And when you wrote the thing about global nomad, the hashtag, that's totally true. That's what we are. Super transient, but at the same time, it's like we have families all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard a quote and it kind of really resonated with me, but it's I didn't make this up, so don't give me any credit here, but I read the quote that, home for us people that grew up outside of our passport country, home is everywhere and yet it's nowhere, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can blend in, we can be those chameleons, and it's just a matter of I totally agree with you. The older I get, I mean, I struggled with this for years, and we'll talk about acclimation in a minute, but I truly am now. It's where my wife is. Right now it's in Utah, and I'm not from Utah. I didn't grow up here, obviously, but this is where my wife is from, and this is where we currently are. But it's a loaded question when you ask a TCK where they're from, right? So it's because we can be happy anywhere, and yet there is somewhat of a I don't want to say urgency, but there always is a want or a yearning for the concept of home, and whether we ever get that or not, that is what it is. But it's we can be anywhere and be happy, and we can still have that strive for that concept of home. My wife grew up in a the same house and has lived in the same area and all that, and that's awesome. Right. I get that, and I don't, and she gets my side of the story and she doesn't, right? So right. It is what it is. Those are the cards we were dealt, and it's the life we've understood, and it's not better, it's not worse. It's what home, the concept of home is to us now. So
yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, a lot of changes through your life, and you have to roll with the punches. There are a lot of seasons in life, and mm-hmm. and like it's an opportunity. It's always going to be a challenge, and that's what I'm good for. Being able to throw those same challenges at my kids and see how they deal, because there's a lot of challenges, in this world that a lot of people can't hang, and maybe that's just the experience or lack of experience that they had. We've just been fortunate to have a lot at a very young age.
Totally, yeah. So how old were you? So you were 2 when you moved to Hong Kong, yeah?
2 when you moved to Hong Kong, and
okay.
then I was just entering my sophomore year, into Taipei, but again, that community came from Hong Kong as well, like yourself, and so it was an easy move for us, physically, and because of basketball and sports, it was an easy transition for me. It was just 3 years, right? So we were lucky. It was a place like Taipei, and it could have been somewhere else. I think it was a good transition from Hong Kong to go to Taipei.
That's how I always remember the transition too, because I spent 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in Hong Kong, and then we moved to Taipei, and I didn't know what I was getting into, but it was such an easy transition. It wasn't an hour flight away. It wasn't like we were going all over the world, but I am so glad we ended up in Taipei over other places, because there were options, and we kind of settled on that, but I think we picked the right one. Speaking of that, though, what are your kids are basically TCKs then too? I mean, they're global nomads as well. How's that working out for them? Do they get it yet, or do they understand the concept? Or
they don't, especially with COVID, right? It's been really complicated for them. They think they're still on an extended vacation.
Yeah.
Why they're doing homework when their friends are out here playing. But we moved to Shanghai last summer, and we were here end of our early January. We were all back here. So they're still in a confused state, because I don't think they realized they were, in school for less than 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, it throws us for a loop because it's, man, you know, we held them back a year, and you know, because they were the youngest in their class.
Yeah.
So we thought it was a good move to hold them back a year, so older, you know, help with the confidence and that thing. But then COVID happened. Now it's like, okay, what do we do? You know, throw a bunch of tutors at them or whatever, but they'll get it eventually, right? And the funny thing, I'm just gonna throw this real quick, is going back to Shanghai. It's like the demographic has really changed at the international school,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, out of 20 kids in the classes, you know, there are about, you know, maybe 5, 6 that are native English speakers, right? The rest are local with foreign passports, and I think my kids weren't ready for that, right? Because I had to, you know, didn't, you know, understand Chinese, you know, didn't understand, you know, Chinese, or why they were speaking that way. And, you know, growing up here or starting their lives here in the U.S., that's all they heard, you know. I think that was the big change that they noticed.
How old are your kids?
They're 5, 6, 7 now. I had 2 of them, you know, with COVID during these times. I had Corona birthdays. One will be in August. Still might be in quarantine in Shanghai for her birthday. So we'll see, you know, 5, 6, 7, these, you know, wanting to get out and experience the world. So I love that about, you know, the U.S., right? Being able to explore and how friendly people are here. But at the same time, we want them that, you know, to give them that experience that we had, you know?
Totally. No, that's awesome, man. Well, let's get right into it then. The positives and the negatives, though. If these, by the way, these first probably 8, 9 questions, if I haven't said it yet, these are standard questions. I ask everybody this, and I'm just kind of curious your experience too. But positives and negatives. You are definitely someone like myself who grew up in the international system, in the international school system. What are the positives and negatives in terms of, you know, your opinion of living that lifestyle, growing up that way?
Well, the easy positive for me is the adaptability, right? The adaptability of being able to live anywhere, right? Because you're so open-minded, so experienced with different cultures and races and ethnicities that you don't even think about that anywhere you go, right? And your friends were from India and from Brazil and from, you know, all these different countries, that they're all the same color growing up, right? So the advantage there is like, you're going to somewhere new. I mean, you're excited, right? Because you're going to meet, you know, you're going to see different culture, you're going to learn a different culture, you're going to learn, you know, so many different things about that country. And that was the biggest advantage, I think, you know, growing up internationally and having an international background, is that you look forward to that. You look forward to that diversity. And even that you take that into professionally, right? Mm-hmm. I was looking at jobs, you know, looking for something that was more diverse. You know, at the same time, when I hired my first 5 employees, it had to be diverse, you know, not only from their experiences, but their, you know, ethnicity as well. You know, and same thing, if you look on the website, it's going to be a diverse use of models that I handpick myself, right? Whether it's a mix or this and that. And that's what I look for in anything. So I think, going away from your question, but again, this is the rambling part I was telling you, Ben.
Ramble away, brother. Ramble away. So that's all good. But
the big advantage for me is the adaptability, right? And then having, you know, friends that you see as family, you know, all over the world. So, you know, you're never alone. You'll be helped by somebody, no doubt. You know, in Shanghai, when I was there, 2009, it was a tough time for me. But 2009, you know, the TAS alumni community was about 15 strong at that time. Anywhere from 94 or 92, you know, from Mark Johansson all the way up to, you know, 2003, 4. Some of the kids, you know, and I played basketball with them. So again, it's just that tight-knit community. And even if you're not in the same year, just that feeling that you're, you know, in Taipei and understanding automatically, man, it's a great feeling. And it's, you know, you don't even think about culture shock at all. Right. So those would be you know, so those would be the biggest ones, I think, is the adaptability and just, you know, and just making sure that you're looking for challenges and diversity all over the place, and that you're always have the support, or somebody always has your back. Right. But then the negatives going into that, there are as well. And I touched on it earlier. It's like, you know, you don't know who to trust sometimes. You know, they could be gone, or, you know, it'd be difficult to have them open up, you know, because they don't know if they're going to stay that long either. And that was a big challenge for me growing up, right? And seeing, my friends in college who in the Philippines, they grew up with their buddies all the way from grade school all the way up, so it's hard to break in those cliques. And that was a challenge for me back because my friends changed, a lot of them every 3 years. Yeah. And I think if I go back to comparing HKS and TAS, I felt, a lot closer to the TS community and my friends there, who were still great friends now, but I just felt a lot closer with the TAS community and compared to the HKS, it was a lot bigger, but going back to, with TAS, it's like, it's so close, it's so, supportive. And for me, that was huge. And even the teachers at that time, not just my peers and my buddies.
Yeah, it was definitely a welcoming community. I felt the same way when I moved there. I was terrified to move there because I moved to Hong Kong when I was, just turning 8, and that's all I knew for 3 years. And then, here you find out you're moving again, and you're like, wait, I just got this down. Wait a minute. But TAS, yeah, back in the day, mid 80s, that's when I ended up there. And I think you're a couple of years later, but it was just such a welcoming community, and it made life a lot easier. The transition process was a lot easier. And I agree with you. I mean, I went to HKS too, and I'll never speak bad about HKS. I loved it there. I mean, Hong Kong is still to this day one of my favorite places. But transitioning to TAS, Taipei American School, I hope it's still that way. I haven't been back in a few years, but I hope it's still that way. But it was such a easy transition for so many of us that were coming from other cultures. Even if we'd been overseas a few years, it was such a, just an easy transition. And I think that just sparked in me even at an early age, like this is going to be home for a while, and let's get used to it. And yet it was easy. Like you just said, I mean, even you, right, being on the show right now, so many people that I interacted with as a 6th grader, they're still my best friends. I still talk to them weekly, yeah. Facebook, all that stuff, it's definitely helped. But I think even if we never had those things, we'd still be in touch, No,
for sure. So again, just going back to the negatives, there aren't a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Depends on what you feel negatives are, but for me, the trust thing was right, because I love having a close knit group of buddies, that I could rely on, and so that was a big thing.
Is it still hard for you to trust people? This is kind of an off the, I let you know a little bit about the questions I was going to ask, but this is kind of shooting from the hip here. Is it still hard for you to trust? Because I still find that every now and then what's the angle? What do people want? And I hate that. And I have to kind of check myself sometimes, but it's always like, that's the one, like, I agree with you. It's kind of a negative side of it, but you kind of check yourself sometimes and you're like, are their intentions good? And I hate that, but yet that's a reality, right? So.
Well, like I said, there, that question, it's a double-edged sword because, mm-hmm. In the business world, yeah, for sure. You see a lot of these people that, you shouldn't trust, but then you get to know and you think you can trust them. So again, it's a lot of that. But in terms of, acquaintances and friends, I've made a lot of great friends that are now, considered family along the way. But again, that happens over time. It's not instant, right? Not 100%. Right now, it's building up that trust, over time, based on, how you interact over the years and that kind of thing. And it changes with family as well, with kids. But I've always kept my my circles close, even in the business world. Keep them close to the ones that you do and you can trust, because you certainly can be burned. There are a lot of con people out there that do their
yeah.
And, can fool even the seasoned veterans.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Let's talk. Let's kind of move this along a little bit. The travel vlog. I mean, I don't know if you have it still, but I mean that's just part of being a TCK as well. Do you find yourself itching for new travel experiences, new situations, new people, anything like that?
All the time. Yeah. Like it's hard for TCKs to really stay put without having an itch to travel somewhere, either for vacation or even for a business trip, right, to a place like, what I mean, it's always going to be there. And that's why I wonder if putting down roots is even feasible or even practical, because I'll always get that itch. I have this conversation with my brothers all the time. It's like we'll get that itch to travel, or go somewhere new, with our, by ourselves or with our families, so again, it's going to be hard to say that we're going to put down roots anywhere, because that was a plan moving to less than 5 years. We're back over there. You know what I mean? So really it's dependent on how business does. It's dependent on, how our kids are developing as well, because family is still going to be the priority there. But again, you have to put food on the plate. So wherever business is stable and where it can grow, that's where you need to be. But again, that travel bug, I don't think you'll ever, you'll always look for it.
Yeah. No, I still have it. COVID's kind of thrown a big twist in everything right now. But yeah, this is probably the longest I've stayed somewhere without getting on an airplane in maybe ever. I definitely have the itch. I'm not gonna lie. It's no shock there. But we kind of talked about the international school experience, but I also wanted to touch as you were as a kid growing up in the international school experience. But I wanted to kind of touch base because you and I have this in common as well. I didn't go back as a teacher. I went back as an administrator a couple of years to Shanghai. But tell me about that. What was it like? You're a kid that grew up in the international schools. What was it like to actually be working there as a teacher / coach? I mean, did you see a significant difference, or was it just it felt like home, or what was that about?
Totally felt like home, right? You're on the different side of the baseline time, but at the same point, I used it as teachable moments, every day. Yeah. For some kids who are going askew, you could kind of see where they were leading, because I wasn't the best student, growing up. I mean, there was trouble to be made, and went that route. But that's what I used as an educator with some of these kids, is really show them the potential that they could have, on the sports court, whether it's a basketball court or whatever, and just show them that that they're capable of anything. They just have to plan, they have to research, they have to get their heart into it and be passionate about something. And that's what I, turned that career into, was just about kind of mentoring or life coaching, some of these kids who are now great friends now, and really paved their own way, super proud, where a lot of them are ending up. And, I'd love to take a little bit of credit there, because during that time, they seek it. Right. They sought it out. They saw it as like, here's a teacher that grew up the same way I did. He's, spitting out stuff left and right. Again, I'm not pushing it and say it's something you need to do, but it's the experience I had, growing up like you are. Right. Mm-hmm. So you can make the same mistakes I am, or listen to some of the things that I'm saying, maybe avoid it. And there in some of the experience that I had growing up, international student. But definitely being an educator at international schools, man, I had no idea. It's a comfortable life, man. The little stress you have for the package that you get, man, or listen to my mom for a long time ago, because it's a comfortable life, right? They take care of it over there, and I felt really taken care of by all the schools that I taught at. But again, going back to your question, it's like, man, it was easy, because I just saw myself in these kids, all over again, and having conversations when they graduate, or even now in their, 30s, like same conversations. Like, you had people going crazy, 18-year-olds going crazy in the States over beer, and you're not. Yeah, that makes sense, because you were having beer probably in middle school. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. And going to clubs a lot early. So it's understandable.
Yeah.
So it's like, I love it, because I relived my childhood through these kids, and just to see where they are now and just doing amazing things, man, just super proud. I think that's the only payback or payment that I need, for
that's
all
awesome.
Effort.
That's a great answer. Yeah, my position in Shanghai, I got to see the families when they moved in. I didn't really get to know the kids too well, but it was the same thing, man. I saw them and I was able to speak from the heart. It was like I totally get the fears, the frustrations, the excitement, every little detail in between. I totally understand what you're saying. It was refreshing, and I felt good doing it. And I think they appreciated that too. You get to tell the ups, the downs, and everything in between, and it was, the no bullshit meter was on, right? So like you could tell them exactly what to expect. And 20 years apart, but that life is that life, it hasn't changed too much. And I appreciate your honesty there. So, cause you're right. You're 100% right. So, Well, now kind of the deep question on the old expat living. You are someone who has had to acclimate a couple times over, and something I never had to do. I had to do it once, and it was, well, twice, I guess, but in tough full times. But you've had to do this a few times. But let's talk acclimation. I mean, you're a guy that moved from your birth country to Hong Kong at the age of 2. I'm going to guess you don't remember the Philippines prior to 2. I could be wrong, but what was it like to, you go from the Philippines to Hong Kong to Taipei back to the Philippines? What was that like?
Again, my parents did a great job of just, keeping us, knowledgeable in terms of who we were as people, right? As Filipinos. And so, like I said, transitioning, I wasn't fearful of that, even if I didn't speak the language until I was a sophomore in college in the Philippines.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's why I learned it. But at the same time, just all these moves, again, just having that confidence, that stemmed from and rooted, was rooted from our parents. We were just let's go anywhere. Any change we need to make that helps the family, let's do it. So for me, the changes were, really felt, more on a personal level, more when my parents divorced or separated. I was a sophomore. It was when we had just moved to Taipei. So, those are when I could really feel the changes, right? Being far from home, being away from my dad, and so that's really when the changes I felt. But when I was young in the Philippines and growing up in Hong Kong and then in Taipei, I mean, again, it was all the same for us. It was just a different place. We always knew Philippines would be there for us when we wanted to go home twice a year. And, so it wasn't anything huge, for us. So until we experienced these, these challenges along the way, that's when we really, sought our friends or sought our cousins, advice on things and this and that. And you were still, different time zones. So that's really when you started to feel the effect of being, away from wherever home is, moving from city to city and, at a very young age. I mean, that's what we are used to, and just like my kids now, moving to China, there's nothing different except people different, speaking differently or a different language. Yeah. So
and I can only experience it from my angle as an American going back to the States, and I definitely struggled. I mean, I looked the part, tried to act the part. I like you, I'd go back to the States. We never went back at Christmas time, but it was always where we spent our summers. So I mean, you blend in, try to blend in and act like you knew what the hell you were doing. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It was just such a interesting 2 months in the summertime. But how did the Filipinos that you went to college with, did they understand your story? Did they get it? Was there any backlash on that?
Right. I was the butt of the joke for the first
Yeah.
And it was, looking Filipino and and kind of trying to act Filipino in a Filipino for foreigners class. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, actually, if you were Filipino enough, because I got that when I came back stateside. Is he American enough? He looks the part, but like everything intrinsically with me was so Asian, it's not funny, right? So it's still to this day.
No, the language was the dead giveaway, right?
You didn't. I didn't realize you didn't speak. Is it Tagalog? What is the?
Tagalog, but I understood all my life. I guess still,
Okay.
always good, but being able to speak or carry on a conversation.
Wow.
Not until my sophomore year. So I was definitely the butt of the joke, as a freshman, but, that was my circle my freshman year anyway. A lot of these guys coming back, who had Filipino parents and ethnicity, but grew up in the States. So, but yeah.
Well, what, moving on then, what kind of advice would you give? I mean, you're definitely a guy who can answer this in a couple ways, but what kind of advice would you give to those that are either currently overseas living the TCK life, plus families? I want to make sure the families hear this as well, but what kind of advice would you give to those either living there currently or about, you and I both gone through the situation where you find out you're moving, so future TCKs plus those currently living, what kind of advice would you give those families?
Soak up the culture, soak up the diversity. This is can't buy, what I mean? All the stuff that you see in books and everything, man, live in it and actually being immersed in it, is the education you'll never get from a book. So really just immersing yourself in it and give, you know, work its way into your blood, into your system before you can say, nah, it's not for me. You know what I mean? Because it can be a scary situation going to China, communist country, but then coming out of it and saying, wow, that's the most, life-changing experience I've ever had. And the people that I've met, turned what was supposed to be a 2-year contract into a decades-long, China experience, eventually learning the language, right? Yeah. So for me, it's like, just immerse yourself in it, right? Allow yourself to get lost in all these different, aspects that any culture, brings, or any, especially if it's 180 degrees from what you're used to, right? Yeah. It's super worth it. And it's worth your kids, especially if you have kids, for them to experience that. More benefits than negatives of living in other countries.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I always look back and I think that I actually, don't get me wrong, we had a hell of an education, at TAS and even HKIS. But I still believe I learned more about culture, more about people outside those school walls, right? Living, just interacting with the locals, you don't have to like everything. You're not going to like everything. But, that was one thing my parents always implemented on my brother and I. You don't just try it. Yeah. Be open to things. You don't have to like it. This is, a culture that's not normal to you, but try it and see what happens, see what sticks. Because, here we are 30 plus years later. I moved to Hong Kong in 83. There's still parts that, like I said, I feel more Asian sometimes than I do American. And here I am back in the States for almost 20 years, with a little 2-year detour in Shanghai. But yeah, it's just about allowing yourself the opportunity to experience everything. Things are not easy. It's not an easy lifestyle. There's things that are perks and there's things that are great and there's things that are easy, right? We've already talked about that. But if you can get over that hump of, just allowing yourself the opportunity to try, right?
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
Yeah. Just leaving that comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such, you may not realize it at the time, but looking back now in hindsight, what an amazing opportunity you're being given, and that's how I've always taken it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I always thought that, because definitely there were times where I thought if I was just back in the States, would life be easier? Especially when I got back to college, would it have been easier to grow up the same way all those guys I played baseball with? Sure, absolutely. And yet I look at that and I think of all the opportunities I would have missed and all the cultures I would have been able to, experience and the trips I would have been able to take and the teammates such as yourself that I'm talking to 30 years later. I can be honest with you. I have not talked to one of the guys I played college. Well, that's not true. One guy that I played college baseball with 20 years ago. He and I are still in touch. That's it. I still talk to more of my high school buddies, that you, yourself and yeah. Tim, all those guys that I went to TAS with and even HKIS with, there's definitely people that I still converse with more than, yeah. And that's just because it's not necessarily easier, but you don't have to explain yourself. But if you allow yourself the opportunity to experience things, keep an open mind, you're going to be good. I think it's an accepting culture over there, not necessarily, well, the locals, so to speak, but just the international school experience. Everybody's in the same boat, right?
Understand.
So
absolutely, they know what everything's going.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter if you're American, European, Filipino. Everybody's in the same boat. You're all just trying to get by, and I've always been an advocate with that. Those international schools become a second home. Yeah, that's I much prefer to be at the school than even home, right? Yeah. Because that's people just got me, and it was you didn't have to think twice. You didn't have to explain yourself. People were in the same exact situation, so. But yeah, I'm a big advocate, obviously, for international schools and multicultural anything, yeah. Right? So it's but yeah, no, I appreciate your answers. Let's that's the first 45 minutes with the technical glitch, and I do apologize for that, brother. It's I'm hoping it looks like people have found us again and everything's okay. But we had to kind of reboot everything and send out a different link. My brother looks like he sent out a different link, so it looks like we have a pretty significant.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, yeah, appreciate that. I don't know what happened with YouTube, but it's back working now. So hopefully everybody's picked this up on YouTube as well. So that said, we're going to turn the page because that's usually how the first 45 minutes goes. We talk TCK stuff. We talk all that stuff. And I appreciate your honesty, Migz. I mean, if there's anybody that screams TCK, it's definitely you, man. So you not only have you lived it, but you're raising kids in the same situation. So that's awesome. But now I get to kind of have the fun side to me is getting to kind of hear what, life has been like for you and where you've been and what you've been doing. We talked about that in the bio, but in 2013, just again, you left teaching to pursue business and, other opportunities, I guess that's fair to say, philanthropy work. What changed? Like because I did the exact same thing. I'm someone right now that's in Utah. I'm not teaching. This is the first full year of my life, adult life, that I've not been a part of a school. And it's still a little bit weird.
Right.
I am coaching still. I'm coaching high school baseball. So I guess in a weird way, I am still connected to school and to education. It's a big deal to still, coaching is teaching. You get that more than anybody. But what allowed you to take that chance and maybe move away from education? I know you started we're going to go through this one by one because I want to make sure people understand the synopsis of every single thing you've been doing since your education days, because it boggles my mind, and you just inspire so many people, especially myself. You call me Cap, man, but I'm looking at you like, man, that's my captain right now. So, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you left teaching to pursue business and philanthropy work, but what led to that? What was the change all about?
Like I said, it's when you go through adversity and some challenges in your personal life, right? You just wake up and say, I'm not going to live with regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Not jumping at opportunities is part of that, right? So always in my pockets, I've had, dreams of things I wanted to do, before I, expire, right? Have my own, as crazy as they were, have my own sportswear brand, something I can design that I want to wear and can share with people. Being able to give back and helping kids, because I had a great education, allowing them the opportunity to do that. Some of the stories that you hear, when I was still teaching about these kids and how they were hungry to go to school. But, I'm going to share a quick one, but there was this sister and brother that had to alternate going to school because their parents couldn't afford, the education for both of them. Yeah. So one was sitting out, helping with the father's fish farm. The one was going to school, and then vice versa, and just alternating. So when you hear stories like that, and then you go back to your education, it's like, wow, and it's just $15. $15 is 3 days of coffee, or 2 days even for us, or some of us. For these kids in the Philippines, it's a year in high school, including books, including some transportation. And that's huge, because some of these kids have dreams that they know they'll never be able to pursue if they don't get any help. And it's not even in the cities of Manila, it's in the outskirts, right? So our very first scholar, Jemina, still on my Facebook, Facebook friend. So I know and track her life all the time. And she's still an educator, as she promised, when we first supported her and we raised funds to send her through college, all the way through high school through college. And she's living out her dreams as an educator, again, just going a different route as an educator, but really just being able to fulfill her dream, is huge, because that impact will impact my students, the ones who are part of that and raising funds, met her and interact with her, and the ones who can see her journey, and it's been 10 years on, right? And she's still doing it. And she was the first one, and many followed. And and because of, the business and everything, sometimes it was sporadic. It wasn't always continuous, right? Because in business, you're going to have challenges, right? In the first 3-4 years of a startup, it's not going to be positive. You're going to be in the red a lot of times. And so when we'd support, right? We'd have an event, for example. One of my favorite events was Jump Rope for Hope. You spend $15, you get a jump rope, but that $15 would send a kid to school for 1 year, right? So that's a super successful event we had at our warehouse in Irvine, California. And, we didn't have too many after that, just because of business and trying to stay afloat, which is what the main goal of, staying in business is how to stay afloat and what you need to do. So when we could, we did. But that's a big part of what drove the bus for all these endeavors that I'm in, right? As to how we can help these kids and how we can give back, because we did have fortunate lives, right? My brothers and I will always go back and say, man, we didn't have to beg for anything. We didn't have to ask for anything. Everything was given. So in many people's eyes, you could see that as spoiled. And maybe it was, but at the same time, it's like now when we're capable and in our lives, in this phase of our lives, what are we doing about it? I think that's the difference, right? Being able to recognize that, yeah, maybe we were spoiled, maybe we had everything that we could, but now what can we do when we're in that position, to show that it didn't go all in vain, right? That international education is going to, the betterment and the improvement of a lot of these kids' lives. And what more for college all the way through.
Well, you're making a difference, man, and there's no way around that. And I respect the hell out of you for that. And you're incredibly right. I always walk a fine line when I say we're spoiled, because
Sure.
In one way you're right, because I'm not arguing with you. Just hear me out here. I mean, but I never thought of myself as better or worse. It was just the cards we were dealt, and yet what a great hand of cards.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And I totally agree with you. I mean, we got to see things and do things before the age of 10, right, that most people read about in books or, wish their whole lives they were able to do. And so, yeah, on that aspect of it, we're totally spoiled. Sure. And yet I think, what I always liked about you, and I think the reason you and I always clicked, is the fact that we had parents that, would never allow us, to be anything more than humble. Yeah. We were down to earth, and your parent, I know your mom well. She was a teacher of mine, and someone I have great respect for, and just knowing you and your family. I know your brothers not well, but I know them enough to know that they probably view the same way. And it's just, people are people, man. It's just we got a great hand of cards dealt to us. It's not better, it's not worse, but we were, we got a great hand, and it's. I've always appreciated that. I came from the parents that had to pay their own way, and it wasn't a golden ticket, so to speak. But in the big picture, it was, because, like I said, I remember going to the Philippines for Chinese New Year break as a 12-year-old. Yeah. How many people can say they got to do that? I learned to windsurf in the Philippines, right? Like, how many kids can say that? Yeah. That said, I don't look at myself as any better than anybody. I don't look at myself as a spoiled brat, because we definitely had some things that, you also have that concept of it's not always easy, and there are things that pop up, and there are things that you don't really understand how to handle, especially when you try to go back to, your home passport country and acclimate. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I think like I said, the one thing that you and I do definitely have in common is that we were humbled growing up too. We had parents that kept us humbled, and I think that's a big part of it, because I have seen, and I'm sure you have too, I can only say this as the American side, there is the ugly American side. There is the concept that we are better just because we're here. I never saw it. I would have gotten smacked on the head if I ever started to kind of, portray that in life. But at the time things were confusing, but looking back now, so grateful, so thankful that I was raised in that environment. You definitely had some things easier, but you're in someone else's country. You're living a life that many people would love to do, and just appreciate it more than anything. And it took me a while, maybe it took me moving back to the States as a 18, 19-year-old kid, but so grateful for the way I was able to live, and be taught the right way, if that makes sense. And we'll get into motivation and mentors in just a little bit, but
now that Toby, I just read Brian Toby's comments, and Tobes, I hope you're still watching, because I'm going to mention you a little bit later, talk about that. He was definitely crucial in the choices I made, in teaching early years. So I'm glad.
Is Toby still at TAS?
He is. He's
Holy
never.
Cow. That's awesome. Well, the funny thing is, I think he was fairly new my senior year, and he stayed there. So that's he's been there a while now. Cutler's still there. That's amazing, man. That's awesome. Yeah. Why would you leave? I get it totally. So, what's up, Mr. Toby? But thanks for watching. It looks like you added one more thing. Looking good, Migz, of course. Dude, you haven't aged. You haven't aged at all. I get compliments, and it's my Irish genes, I guess. But you know, this is 44, and what are you, 42?
43.
43, yeah, dude. It's that's awesome. Yeah, Toby wrote again, man. Let's check in on him. I'm here and enjoying every minute, as he should be, as he should be. Yeah, I went. Yeah, when I was in Shanghai, I was able to go back my first year there and go back, and I hadn't been back to Taipei in 17 years prior to that. But so much has changed, and yet nothing's changed at all. You know, in that Timu area, and I love it because of that. So
yeah, no.
Let's dude, you just. I'm fascinated by you, and I want to. Like I told you earlier, I want to kind of go, maybe some brief synopsis, because I want to quickly go through this. But give me kind of a quick synopsis of each one of these things. So you left education, you ended up in Shanghai. Well, I guess you were already there, right? Because you were teaching in Concordia, and then you stopped that, and then you became the founder of the programming, or founder and head of programming for Empire CrossFit in Shanghai. Tell us about that. How'd you get into that?
Again, another thing that I had in my pocket, I always wanted to have my own gym, run it my way, you know, have the clients that I wanted, train them the way I wanted, you know, because when you're teaching, I mean, obviously you have to follow a curriculum and this and that you're not necessarily fond of, right? Yeah. So that was one of the dreams, and the opportunity came, and I jumped at it, right? To be the fourth, you know, CrossFit gym in Shanghai. Now there are 115, like I mentioned earlier, and to see it just grow. It's still there, you know, twice the size is amazing for me, because it's like, it just goes to show, if you plan it right, you have the right people, you know, on top, and you build the foundation correctly, man, the sky's the limit. You can build anything, you can build it, you know, even bigger than how you imagined it. Right. And for me, that's huge. Even if I'm not a part of it anymore, programming, just to watch it on WeChat and their social media. It's like, wow, you know, it started from a dream. It started from an idea, right? To really focus on the locals with this new concept called CrossFit, which is now dead. You know what I mean? And you know, because of these, you know, these loudmouth owners. But I'm saying, you know, it was just one of the things that I wanted to pursue, you know, and the clothing was just hand in hand in it, and just kind of fell into place, you know, timing wise. When my wife decided that we should try out the States and go there for a little bit for her business. And I said,
what does she do?
Well, they manufacture tools. They've been manufacturing tools for over 40 years, you know, private labeling, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, Tractor Supply, all those big brands. And again, this is old school, you know, salesman tactics, right? Old school Taiwanese businessman, my father-in-law, just amazing, and a big inspiration, you know, to me and my wife, you know, to be able to mimic and to just shadow, you know, how everything is built from the ground up, right? Without a lot of help. It's still family run, you know, it's not a corporation. It's not, you know, there's no board behind it. It's the family making the decisions 40 years on. And to me, that's amazing when you can do that. And that's my vision for anything that I start as well. Anytime it goes corporate, I don't have my hands in it, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
That touch. So anyway, starting Emperor CrossFit, you know, it was my dream, start my own gym and to have the people in there that I wanted, you know, to work with, and the clientele that I did. So
let's I want to hold off on HollowRock, because I think that's kind of the big one. But let's talk. You were the founder of RSTR Custom Sports Uniforms. What is that still going on, or what's the concept there?
Concept is, you know, again, just providing uniforms. So even during HollowRock, I mean, as a startup, you're trying to grab business left and right. Just let's be honest, right? It's not going to come first couple of years. But what I knew was going to be a constant were basketball tournaments all over the world every month of the year, right? So I just started reaching out to the different leagues and say, we'll start doing our uniforms, we'll sponsor uniforms here and there, to what spiraled into, you know, a uniform business. So it's actually pronounced roster, like a team roster. And, you know, and I use my manufacturing Pakistan for that, right? Not even touching manufacturing in China, but this is through a partner that I have in Pakistan, and he runs all the production. I basically do all the business development. But again, uniforms is something that you'll always need, that there'll always be a demand for, any sport, any part of the world. And, you know, that's just been a nice thing that's grown over the years too, alongside HollowRock. But again, it's just about the uniforms. For me, it's just about creating and designing the uniforms.
Do you so they're your partner, it sounds like, is in Pakistan, yeah?
Yep.
Do you think you'd have those same kind of connections if you born and raised and lived forever in the Philippines?
Absolutely not. Like I said, I wouldn't even think to go anywhere outside the Philippines or anything that I knew, right?
Yeah.
For me, let's go everywhere. I want to expand and diversify into Vietnam, into Sri Lanka, and all these places because, again, business-wise, it's the smartest thing to do, right?
Yeah.
In terms of cost and pricing and all those
Oh,
things.
totally.
Yeah.
Well, then let's move on to I screwed this one up initially, and I apologize for that. But the founder and managing director of Sleeping Dragon Private and White Labeling Apparel. Tell us about that, because apparently I screwed that up, and I want to make sure we get that right. So,
okay. No, I'm not. So again, these are all connected to HollowRock, right? And private labeling we've been doing since we started HollowRock, and we use HollowRock now as a platform for people to to show potential customers, like, this is what we do. We have our own brand, but we actually private label and white label and manufacture, right? So Sleeping Dragon is something that I'm gonna launch in Shanghai, and it's basically private labeling of sportswear or apparel, where we do the whole thing. Like, we source, we design, we'll even help you with fulfillment and such out of our headquarters in Shanghai. But again, it's just a part of an opportunity that stemmed from starting HollowRock in 2015 or 2016. So Sleeping Dragon again is again being the moneymaker now during these times of COVID, right? So even in the height of Corona, we're already producing in March, since March, out of China. So again, it's starting to be, and for me, it's like, wow, if I don't have to think about social media or pay for marketing, I think this is the route I want to take, right? In terms of just, I'll manufacture for you, I'll produce whatever you want. Here's, HollowRock gear for all the designs and anything. You can just move a label or switch out a seam, this and that, and we're good to go. So the fact that we have our own brand, and tie that to manufacturing is very advantageous, because people can say, look, it's not, I'm not moonlighting as getting these pictures from all over the place and say, look, this is what I did. You know what I mean? We live this brand, and we've seen the market at the biggest CrossFit events the last 3 years.
Well, look at the next comment, man. I hope I hooked you up here. My friends from Wisconsin, they may need you. So there you go. This is exactly why we do this, right?
Oh, for sure.
Danielle, we'll talk after the show. Let's see if we can get you guys hooked up. But yeah, Jeff is her husband, and obviously they may need some uniforms. So there you go, brother. Let's talk. Okay, so the reason I'm saving HollowRock is because I know that's kind of your bread and butter right now, and I really want to focus on that. But you have we talked about the philanthropy side of you and what you do. Now that I can finally say that word, appreciate. But let's talk about your HollowRock ScholarFit Fund. What's that about? Because I'm assuming that's philanthropy right there, right?
That's the one I started, right, and just rebranded into Scholar. Started as when I started Athletic Council in Concordia, right? It was a fund that we raised, raised through events we had throughout the year leading up to Chinese New Year. And we'd go back, and have the top 10 kids all send in the school. And then we'd have sports clinics and everything where my kids would coach. The first year was exactly how it was. We had clinics, right? And each of my kids on the Athletic Council would coach their own team. We'd have a tournament. Winners would get funds for school. So built everything, in a sports and in kind of competition environment, competitive environment, which my kids loved, which my students love, and they still talk about to this day as one of the things that they loved in high school. But back there, it started as that, and later on became more of just having fun and just playing volleyball games and having, basketball games, and then even dance competitions. So you'd have dance competitions and kids would even win tuition money there, to where, at our highest point, I think we came back our last year, everyone just had a duffel for their week's worth of clothes, because we needed their check-in allowance or baggage allowance for a box of shoes, right? So we had maybe up to 800 pairs of shoes our last year that we brought back with us, right, on carts. So international into Manila and Manila to Cebu, we had like tons and tons of, boxes of shoes that people donated from Concordia. And that's just what it grew to, in the 5 years that we were doing it, 4 or 5 years. And it was just amazing because we'd bring back the stories, we'd have videos of the experience, and obviously the kids would talk about it. And for me, that's what it was about. That's really the engine that drives anything right now, is just seeing how it affected the kids that I was teaching at the time from international schools who have the best life and live the expat life, and show them the experience too of how you can affect one kid or a whole school, that you were dealing with, right? I mean, we came from the school, like Hong Kong, HKIS and TAS were both Christian background, right? So we had interim, trips that we go and do, water project or Habitat for Humanity, those things. And this one was just on top of, on all of those, over all those, because it was the kids who wanted to do it, and it was them saying, I'll use up my Chinese New Year every year to go back and do that again, right? Because it's going to help more kids. I have fun doing it because I'm coaching the sport that I'm doing it to kids I don't know. And what happened, a lot of these kids grew up, and saw these kids all the way through high school. But for me, that I watched those videos all the time, right? And again, that's really the important part of anything that you aspire to do, right? Is to build something greater and bigger than yourself.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and never make it about the money. The money causes the headaches, right? We want to afford everything we want in life, whether it's a nice car or a couple of houses here and there. But at the end of the day, it's about that. It's about how many people you affected, about how many people you were able to, improve, lives of,
No, I appreciate that. And I want to kind of go back a little bit. You talked about, we spent a while ago, we were talking about, the perks and the positives and negatives of growing up overseas. And you just kind of brought it up again. It's for as many positives and as many perks as we had. I think the one thing that, through, obviously my parents too, and your parents as well. But I think the one thing that TAS and HKIS taught me more than anything was to give back, right? It's a concept of, you have it better, you should be able to give back. And if not, I'm not necessarily saying physicality stuff either. I'm talking about just in life. You're a coach, I'm a coach. It's funny you just brought that up because I'm coaching baseball stateside these days. I'm at a high school here, and one of the things we just did, my team, there's a grief center here that we took it's the middle of summer, middle of COVID. Everything's, kind of a weird time right now, but, we actually went over to this grief center and we cleaned up their grounds. We did some charity work. We did, it wasn't for publicity. It wasn't for anything other than I wanted these kids to realize that they have it pretty good. At the end of the day, they have it pretty good. And what, if you can give back, why wouldn't you? And I truly believe, and I got, told by a couple of parents, they love the concept and everything was great. And they asked me where that came from. And it kind of hit me in a funny way because I didn't realize you weren't supposed to, right? Because that's what we grew up doing, all the perks and everything that the shiny stuff and the traveling for sports and the, just easy living, as you put it. It was instilled in us that we give back, we had it pretty good, but we also learned quickly to give back. And that's just something that's always stuck with me. I never even hesitated. I never even thought about why would we not, COVID's a crappy time for everybody right now, but there's still things you can do. And it's kind of one of those essential things as a coach. I think if I can make these kids see that, they have it pretty good. They didn't have it as good as we did, but they still have it pretty good. There's always somebody struggling, and they might not be able to express it or show it, but if you can give back, why wouldn't you? And I think that's a product of growing up the way we did. I saw it at HKIS. I saw it at TAS. I saw it with my parents, give back. It's not that hard. What's an hour and a half on a Saturday, give back. And I think, if I can implement that and maybe change some lives and change some thought processes, why not? I think that's part of coaching. You're still teaching as a coach.
Absolutely.
You're still teaching life lessons. And I think that's just equally important. So.
No, absolutely. Like I said, that's probably still the full. If I wasn't, so itching to scratch all these, these passions of mine, I would still be teaching. I love it. It's my passion.
Me too. Me too. Well, it's always once a teacher, always a teacher. I took finally walked away, and it doesn't mean I'll never go back, but I just needed a break for right now. And but I do believe that kinship. Once a teacher, always a teacher, and I have much respect for the teachers. I like to think I was a good teacher, and yet I saw some that would just go above and beyond, and I'm amazed in some of my professional idols, so to speak, were teachers and still will be. It's a true profession that often gets overlooked, especially stateside. Sadly, but it is what it is. So, yeah.
So again, I mean, I don't know if we're going to segue to our mentors and then people who are doing, but certainly it's again, it comes back to the character, right?
Yeah.
And it's discernment of the lives that we had and were given, and being able to give back is not for everybody. But when you realize what you've got or what you had and what you were blessed with, man, it only seemed right, to do that or give a percentage of what you can to do.
Yeah. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to get back. And you look in the mirror sometimes, you have it pretty good. Even the bad days, you have it pretty good. So that's my philosophy anyway. So let's talk, real quickly though, because I want to give you ample time to talk about HollowRock. But director of Basketball Active Kidz in Shanghai. I know what that is. I was there for a little while. Is that still something you're doing? Because I know I don't even think we've talked about this. You and I know, and you've alluded to it a little bit, but you're actually moving back to Shanghai next week.
Well, it might like a little longer,
Okay.
So it'll really depend on, the situation here and kind of allow people to, foreigners to come in or not. But that's all dependent again on where it is. But before COVID happened, I was I took over as the director for basketball for AKS, which is the longest and the oldest, the pioneer youth organization in Shanghai, right? They started, I think it was 2000 or something like that. And, and I just saw something different in the program that I wanted to change. I wanted to instill, from the coaching staff all the way to the youngest kid that we had, right? So at that time we had about 250 strong, kids, local and international school kids, part of the program. Again, it allows me to come back and coach. I coach the U11s as well as the U16 because we have about 15 teams. So that allowed me to go back into coaching, right? And even if I could have hired someone to do so, it was me who wanted to go back and kind of coach a little bit, dipped in there. And, I haven't closed the doors teaching or going back full time as well, right?
Yeah.
When businesses are running and can run on their own, I think going back would complete the circle for me. But AKS right now has given me that opportunity to network, with the kids, from local schools and international schools, how things have been done in the last, 5-6 years that I haven't been there and been back. Give me that opportunity to coach, being able that opportunity to mentor the coaching staff and build up the coaching staff. So really just a great opportunity that fell on my lap, through Jerry Koo, which we talked about earlier.
Jerry, yeah, I told you I was going to mention him. Yeah, Jerry, this is for you right now.
Going down short attention span, but anyway, he was funny. Mentioned to me they're looking for a direct. It's around my alley. Yeah. So anyway, on the short term, hopefully when I go back, we can start that up again, and I can go back and transition. I know even the kids or the clientele has taken a hit, right? Because some of the expats aren't going back. Some of the local kids too are, in terms of hesitant of training full time. So we'll see how that goes when I can actually go back.
No, I love it. Yeah, I'm familiar with it because we had it at SCIS as well. So they did that there. So so when do you sleep, man? Because we haven't even talked about, you've got a bunch of kids, a wife, and what I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things going on. But the biggest thing you've got going on, and I really want to make sure we plug this, but the HollowRock gear. Let's talk about that, man. That's your bread and butter right now, and I want to make sure you have ample time to talk about that. So,
I mean, that's just my the passion behind it. I wouldn't say I'm talented in anything. I'm really just obsessed in something that I feel I'm good at, that I love doing. but it's not necessarily talent for doing it. It's just an obsession, that I take to that obsessive level of creating something and making it successful in my own way. Right. And HollowRock was that one big thing that I wanted to, to kind of baby and nurture all the way throughout, my
Well, yeah, let's explain how. I know what it is. I've kind of followed you for a couple of years, obviously, but let's make sure people understand exactly what HollowRock gear is.
So HollowRock is an apparel brand that, again, will go from, is a multidiscipline brand, right? We do accessories, apparel, footwear, everything you name it. So it's a sportswear brand that's multidiscipline. So even if the pricing is where it's at, right? And the pricing is not cheap, because we I like to deal with premium fabrics. I like to go, all out in what we can do, because everyone's doing 100% cotton. Anyone, you're in a different level. If you can elevate what you're doing in terms of technology, in terms of material and fabric, and that's why I focus on that, right? Even though it was more expensive, the payoff would have been much bigger, as they're showing now, but it took a while to ramp up because of that, of the way I wanted to go about it. But, essentially it's a sportswear brand, that caters to the multidiscipline athlete. These days, everyone is not a one sport athlete anymore. They're either doing yoga, in the evening, riding their bike in the morning, doing jujitsu on the weekend, or playing on a, sports league throughout the week, right? So we wanted gear that, was affordable, maybe not on the cheaper side, but affordable, that you can use through all these disciplines, right? So we wanted a short for men that would fit properly, number one, but at the same time felt comfortable, felt like it would help you improve, what you were trying to do, whether it's losing shape or getting better in a sport or something, but using it across those different disciplines, right? So being able to use one short, for swimming, or for board short for surfing, turn around and use it in the gym, the same way, right? And again, you're basically dealing with, nylon, polyester, and a lot of the same fabrics, but again, it's a lot of it is marketing, but essentially the same activewear material that Lululemon and Nike are using, right? We just don't have the marketing funds that they do. Okay, so for me, it was always about that. It was always about being able to design something that I love. I know my friends would love. Maybe there's a niche out there that I could carve for myself, right? So I didn't go in with a business partner. I didn't go in with a business plan. I just went in, right? And that's what it's all about, because that's the education I got. So I was telling my wife, it's like, man, I went, these last 4 years was going back to grad school for me, and learning it the street way, and learning it the hard way, because you didn't know not to take that step, right? Or wasting or putting a lot of money into this effort, just turning around and doing something else because I didn't know or learn that. So it was all about trial and error. It was all about inviting people and people who had experience in for meetings, just so I can absorb as much as I can, right? So now 4 or 5 years in, I think I'm equipped, and that's why some of these newer businesses, that are also online based, have sprouted because of the experiences that I had the last 4 years, right? In the first 4 years of HollowRock, I should say, right? So what HollowRock is doing, on the B2C, on the consumer side, is we're limiting our range. We're not going out so wide anymore. We're catering to a wider demographic, meaning not only age, right, but as well as the disciplines. So so a lot of people would call it athleisure wear right now, or life, not just sportswear, and that's what you're seeing these days, and that's not going to go away, especially when you have Corona. I mean, who's not wearing sports shorts or leggings every week? You know what I mean? Even if you're
that's my wife right now, yeah, and I can't fault her. It's great. So
everybody, right? That's what I'm wearing below. So for me,
yeah.
so for me, it's about the comfort. It's about being happy with what you're wearing, because you feel and look good, and that makes you want to perform, and give yourself, give your all to whatever you're doing, right? Whether it's for training, or for sports, and this is from 13 all the way up to 60. My mom wears the leggings, and she loves to show it off and say, "Hey, look at your model," showing off the leggings. Well, I don't see that, but thank you for it, because she was one of the first ones who supported me, with this endeavor. So
No, that's great. Do you consider yourself a dreamer?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a dreamer and a go-getter in every sense of the word. Like I said, it's one thing to dream it, but to go after it, takes a whole different set of cojones, if you know what I mean. To just
Yeah.
knowing if you can and 90% and even hearing like 90% fail anyway, and
Hmm.
still going at it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So I give a lot of respect to my wife and to my kids too, and just putting up with it. Because there were challenging times, definitely, but just to see the how it's allowed me to grow as an individual as well.
Yeah.
Can't get that education anywhere.
I think I already know the answer to this, and I'm not trying to sell that short. Your dream answer is exactly how I feel too. So, I mean, you and I talked back in, I want to make sure people understand this. Half the reason I'm doing this show, brother, is because of you. I don't know if you realize that or not. It's we had that chat. I tracked you down last fall, I believe. But I was in a moment in my life, and it's kind of cool because this is exactly what we were talking about earlier. The true people that know you, the true people that connect with you, and you don't even have to explain yourself. Those can be people from your past. Those can be people from 25 years ago. And I didn't even hesitate when I saw what you were doing and you were taking that chance and cojones, like you're talking about, right? Um, I was in a crossroads because I was like, do I do another year teaching? I can easily do it, but am I mailing it in? You know what I mean? It wasn't that I lost the passion for teaching, but sometimes you just need a break. You need to kind of reset the batteries, and you kind of have to go from there. You were the guy I reached out to.
Oh,
I saw what you were doing, man, and I admired it, and I just wanted you to truly know that that's part of the reason this show's even happening. We can get to that later, but I mean, it's something about you get that itch and it never goes away to dream big, but dreams don't work unless you do, right?
yeah,
So it's a concept of this show started off as something just to kind of bypass some time, and it's grown into something totally different than I ever imagine it to. But you were a part of that, brother. You were somebody who I saw was taking that chance, and I just don't want to get to that deathbed era and think, why I shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? So it's you know
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
a young. I like to think I'm a young 44. Yeah, we're in our 40s now, but it's never too late, man. It's always there's always time if you put in the work. So
like I said, again, it's having the ball, because at the end of the day, you don't want to live with regret.
right.
Because sometimes
So many people do.
yeah, for sure.
You
And
know.
Toby just threw up another thing again. He's come to the warehouse on several occasions to purchase products. So again, I have all the tons of pictures of my former students who used to buy product come by, and just it's so important, right, that all these people who have woven themselves in my life are coming back and just supporting me in that sense, and never asking for discounts. That's the important part, right? That's when you know
Well,
that.
yeah, I can tell you why, man. You're a good dude. You've always been a good dude, and people respect the hell out of you. So that's yeah, totally. Which brings me to my next question, motivation wise. I'm assuming I think I already know the answer to this, but what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
Just that opportunity to help people. That
Mhm.
again, it's a lot to take when you hear that, and again, you take it how you will. But for me, in my different ways, it's that, and then at the same time, being able to give my kids that I call it street education, because no school will teach you that,
Yeah.
right? Even when they were 2 years old, they were helping me set up my trade show booths, right, at LA Convention Center. This massive center, this 2-year-old holding a milk bottle, setting up shoes and stuff. It's gold for me, and for me, that's what I want them to know. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? This is not. I'm not working for anybody. Daddy's the boss, but then also, you know, putting in the blood, sweat, and tears to make sure something happens. And those are
Yeah.
the teaching moments for your own kids that you want to have them see, because they're gonna eventually they're essentially emulating what you're doing. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
100%. Yeah.
You're laying on your ass watching TV. That's probably. I mean, I probably think that's they think that would be okay, but for me, I want them to show that dad never sits down. But dad finds time to enjoy life. But at the same time, it's like he grinds. You know what I mean? He hustles. He wakes up and does the things that he needs to do to get things done and to put stuff on the map. So for me, that's really the draw. Right? That motivation to have my kids, idolize me in a sense to where, maybe they want to do something like that when they grow up, right? Because
Yeah.
we're at that phase right now where it's like, I'm not going to push you to do something you don't want to do, right? All my girls are different. One's an athlete, one's a cheerleader, the other one's just, whatever. She just goes with, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to move a certain way, right? I'm just going to push them along to see what they go. But again, having that image of parents working hard and at the same time still finding time to be with them and to and to raise them and to be there, to read a bedtime story. That's the gold, man. That's why you do it. That's why you do it. It's never to be able to afford that car that you always dreamed about.
You're doing a hell of a job. I can already tell, man. Are you a goal guy? Is that something you write down? Like what's your strategy there?
People who know me know that I don't like writing stuff down. I think about it. I think about it a lot. I do my research and I do it. I just doing business plans lately because of the new businesses and things like that. But HollowRock, I didn't have a business plan or a business partner, right? It was basically doing my own research and saying this will work, because when I set my heart on something, and again, seeing all these things, endeavors are really paying off because of the support that I get, the belief that I have in myself and my background to be able to see it through or find some positives out of it, right? Because there are things that are going to fail. And on some levels, the different things I've done, are failures. But again, what you pick up and what you create, on a different level, is still an extension of it. So do you really see it as a failure or not? So it's really perspective. And for me, it goes back to that, right? At the end of the day, you're not taking any money to the grave with you. You're taking experiences. You need money for those experiences for sure. But, if my kids, followed my footsteps in any way, I'd be happy and satisfied and know I've lived a blessed life.
Well, it comes down to accountability, right? I mean, and that's I think 90% of what you're talking about right now is just accountability. Get up, show up, move it. Like the world's not going to wait for you, right?
No, sure. And people are opportunistic, in terms of how they refer to me, and that doesn't necessarily have a positive, when I hear that. It's not always positive when you hear opportunistic, but for me, opportunistic means, it's creating your own opportunities. I think, again, Oprah is the one I've heard, she has to be seen as a mentor, but it's like, always be prepared, because when that time comes or that opportunity comes, you want to be prepared, so, over prepare, for things or any endeavors that I have, because when that opportunity comes, and for sure it will come, to what level you don't know, but when that comes, you're ready, right? You're ready, and all those efforts aren't wasted. So that's the story of, in terms of where I am in terms of business, because I over prepare, right? And I wasn't, like you said, a goal writing guy. It was just, I have these goals in my head and they've always been in my head, and going after, I know what to do, right? I know what I need to do. And it's not something that anyone can dictate. It's not something that anyone can really tell you, right? They can show you, but at the same time, it's like you have to go your own way if you're going to build it the way you want it. So, so those are the things that I follow in terms of motivation.
I love that. Yeah. No, I love that. What's a daily routine look like for you? Are you an early bird? Are you a night owl? Like what? Yeah. Tell me about that process.
And I'm going to share with you a funny story. I think I shared with you in COVID. And this goes back to being opportunistic. It started with one bike that I had in the garage, that I sold and flipped.
Oh, yeah.
Demand for, and 2 months in, and about 85 bikes later that I flipped, I probably made more than what I made as an educator.
so yeah, no, I totally get that. Explain that. What do you mean by flip? I know what you mean, but let's make sure everybody does. So
well, I've tapped, because of the sportswear business, I've done events for kinds of companies, and so I have friends who are distributors for bikes, and I've done clothes for them or this and that, and I reached out, and so anyway, I'm able to source these bikes, whether newer or secondhand, and I tinker with them. I do a little switch out on the seat or whatever, and then flip them, and again, it's early bird catches the worm. So some of these bikes are all the way up in LA, or some of these are all the way down in San Diego. So I'm in my car sometimes 6:30, just so I'm the first guy to pick up the bike and flip it by lunchtime. So again, it's a lot of the business I do now is on the phone, so it's always with me. But again, for me, it's like I'm always on the go, always on hustle, and the girls now understand it. They're like saying, "Where are you going, Daddy? Getting another bike?" So they and the grit that's involved in making something happen, whether it's something. And for me, I've never been one to say I'm above flipping bikes or I'm above flipping pancakes. It's not about that. You'll see every meme from every billionaire sports man or woman, and they have done something gritty like that to get them where they are.
Totally.
Even in whatever phase in their life. Right. The last one I saw was Ronaldo, who's probably the most famous soccer player, now and richest. I think he was washing cars on the street, from that to where he is now. So for me, I use that as motivation too. It's like, man, nothing is beneath me in terms of doing. Okay, there's some things. Okay, I'm not going to say everything. But bike flipping during Corona time, who would have thought? 85 bikes later, and it's still going strong. So for me, that's only going to last until we get back to Shanghai. But that's the laughable moment for me. It's like, man, all these people crying that there's no way to make money or waiting for stimulus checks. Forget that. You can do so much, right? As long as you're obsessive about it and you're doing it the right way. So anyway, side story there.
No, man, I love it. I love all this actually. So we started to get into this earlier. You knew this question was coming. Let's talk mentorships and mentors, people that have been a big influence to you. I don't think no matter who you are, I don't think you get anywhere without truly having mentors. And I've definitely had them in my life. I still have them. It's still people I want to be like and work my butt off because of what I've seen them do and progress and just teach me and just be a mentor. So let's talk about that in terms of your own life and in your own work ethic and things like that. Let's talk about, mentors and who's influenced you as a person, and not just a person, but teacher, businessman, all of it. So we'll talk about your mentors.
Well, like I said, number one would have to be my mom. She's the first to believe in HollowRock anyway, right? First one to put money. But at the same time, growing up, I knew how she mentored her kids too outside the classroom and showed them, and always a shoulder for someone to cry on or this and that. And so I knew that, that's in her capacity. We were sharing our mom and she was mom to thousands of other kids. Right. And so that would be
again, I'm one of them. Your mom was, I think I said this earlier, but she was my either first or second, I can't remember actually, but she was definitely a big influence on why I started writing and the journalistic approach to things too. And how I ended up in, I wrote for the college newspaper because of your mom. She definitely, when I was leaving TAS, she wrote me a whole bunch of letters of recommendations and things like that. So man, I'm one of those kids. I'm one of those kids, and your mom will always, when I think of your mom, I definitely think in high regards, man. So make sure you pass that along to her.
Oh, I will. I don't know if she's watching right now, but that she understands that, and she understands it meant to many people. But for me, I don't think, because I rag on her so much, I don't think I have for she's believed in me ever since, right?
Yeah.
Been through ups and downs, throughout the whole process, but at the same time, it's like you need someone to emulate, right? And what better your parents that you had. So you and I, again, understand how lucky you are in that sense, to be able to see someone, successful and just help people in so many different ways. And that's number one. It wasn't about my mom pushing me to, you should teach, or you should play basketball, you should do this. It was never about that. It's like, follow your passion. You want to learn the hard way, if you need to. Here are the tools that I had, use them if you want to. That's the kind of mentor I always ask, because those devil's advocate at the same time, keep pushing you along, right? Because that's all we need, right? Either out of fear, either out of rejection, that we have. You need always somebody just keep nudging you along. And she was she was always that person to say, keep your head up, and just rode with the waves when we had, I remember, losing basketball games and just lashing out at her, whatever, realizing later, like, the one filming our game, you know what I mean? So it's like, so number one would be her. and she'll know that. And again, she was the one who believed in me at HollowRock and put the first money down and said, do what you can with it, and hopefully you return the favor and give me that wallet full of money that you promised me when you were
Yeah.
always right. I'm going to leave Mr. Franz for the last one, but then another part of my career was Brian Toby. Hope you're still watching, Tobes, but I don't think he understands too what kind of a mentor, kind of big brother he has turned into, for me, right? Just an inspiring story of an educator or someone coming over from California as well, not knowing what to expect out of Taipei, and just making a career out of creating these athletes and student athletes who have just reached their potential, in high school, and just understand that they can just grab anything, if they wanted it, So he came to Taipei the same year I did, 92. He was my coach on the JV squad for volleyball. And that turned into just a big brother, little brother thing when I started teaching in 2000, because he was there the whole way, just showing me how it's done, alongside other mentors that I had at Taipei, Margaret Bond, Gary Petty. Some of these teachers just world class and understand, the whole international school system. But Brian Toby took it a different level and treated me as family. I watched his kids grow. We'd go to beach trips, with his family, and just included me because he knew I was there by myself. My mom was there. But as a teacher, who's going to show me the way, right? Especially we're in the same department. He was just showing me the ropes. And from that, that respect has just steamrolled into, wanting a life like him. And he was always about family first. It makes it cracks me up inside, and it's always a sensitive spot because I knew how he treated his kids and he treats his kids, and to see where they are now and to see how they've grown. I wanted to be, like him, and if I continued in education, that's who I wanted to emulate, right? It's like the perfect life, if there was any, is to, form these kids' minds at the same time, give your kids, a balance, knowing that I'm also coach and dad, and then just being a friend to anyone who asks for it. And he's just been a mentor and big brother in so many ways for me. I hope you're still watching, Tobes, but it's just meant so much throughout the different phases of my life, and then to come back through this HollowRock phase and just purchase, sportswear equipment. I think you spent $500 last time, but that just means so much, and goes to show kind of, when you're teaching, it never really ends. I don't know.
Great point. Yeah, that's a great point, man.
Who was that? Who quoted? It's like, as an educator, you never know where your teaching ends, right? And you're always teaching. And for me, that's what I want to do for my kids. That's what I want to do for the kids wherever, whether it's a basketball program or if I go back to teaching, or even if it's through the Apparel brand, right? And the partnerships that I have, whether it's sports teams or organizations, to be able to show that there's someone who's going to watch you, look after you and support you, throughout. So, and then my the last big one, other than my parents, my mom, my dad, and Toby's, is Coach Franz. And he's been my background on my Facebook for a while since he passed away. And it's a sensitive topic for me because he was such a father figure for many, right? And for me, with my parents splitting up at that time, he was huge. And Mrs. Franz too, but he was huge in terms of giving me that direction, right? And giving me that focal point of, basketball is great, but what you can pick up, life lessons you'll pick up from being on a team, and from, and having these guys as my buddies out off the court as well, how that would shape who I am today. You can't pay for that either. You can't pay for mentorships that way. And this is purely by luck and through, serendipity that, Mrs. Franz and Coach Franz, fell into our lives at the time that they did. And, again, I was just lucky I went up with Janet, a couple of our other, and Ray Lee, months before he passed. And I think I'm glad that I had the chance to do it, just to say thank you again, and just to show, my respect of, I've tailored my life pretty much, to be someone like you, right? To be a father figure to those people who are, who are craving that at that point in time when it's low or it's challenging, just to be there, right? And not even just to, give it the easy way, but that tough love too. I mean,
I was on the receiving end of a lot of those tough loves, and I agree with you, brother. Like friends, I mean, there were days where I was just so pissed at him, at life, but you didn't realize at the time. Maybe you would take a couple of weeks, but he was teaching you how to be a better, not only person, but just growing. You're right. He taught me how to be a man too. Like aside from my own dad. But he would challenge you, and it was at the time you're just this 17-year-old punk thinking like, what do you know, guy?
Sure.
And you're right, and yet you step back and you look back, and he pushed you because he believed in you. It wasn't, he was the biggest as a coach too, and you probably appreciate this. It's when I felt like he was always just riding my ass in practice, right? So, and it was just, but then it hit me like he was the one that kind of made me realize that it's the coach when he stops doing that stuff,
Absolutely.
right? When it's you want that, you don't realize it at the time, but it's as soon as those coaches that stop talking to you and stop pushing you and stop, pushing you to be the best, not only player, but just like I said, as a person, as a man, that's when you need to worry.
For sure.
I never had to worry about that. Yeah. The guy, there were so many nights I'd go home and think like, I can't do this. Like and yet
I'll never get out of the house for sure.
Yeah. I'm never going to get out of his doghouse. And yet by the time I graduated as a senior, my junior year, it was tough because I didn't really particularly care for the way he did things. And yet by the time I left as a senior, gave him a big old bear hug and just thanked him like you. He taught me so much just about life.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you on that. So
opportunity to see him again, to tell him thank you, and then to actually just physically with my own eyes, like 20 years later, have him put a HollowRock hat on. I mean, that was huge for me. You know what I mean? And just what he did for a lot of the guys on the team too.
Mm-hmm.
And he never wanted anything back.
Never.
And, him and his wife, the same thing. Mrs. Coach was the same way. But for him, I remember my senior year having a bad start, spraining ankles. I was on the edge, wanted to quit, So he said, so fucking quit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If that's what you want to do. For me, it's like, what an asshole. Myself, my 17-year-old self said, what an asshole, man.
Yeah.
I committed myself to 3 years to you, and you're just going to tell me to quit. Well, the next day, obviously, those words resonated, and the respect I have for him resonated. So I marched back into our office, and I apologized. I said, look, I understand. I understand I'm not starting out. I'm letting out my frustrations because of a sprained ankle, and I apologize. And that's the respect that people had for him. Just being able to take that, being in the doghouse was something important, something we needed to be. So for me, when I saw him that last time in Seattle or in Washington, amazing. He's already been going through cancer for 6 years, and he goes, yeah, Migz, your senior year didn't start off so well, with your sprained ankle. How did you remember that? All the kids coached. How the hell did you remember I had a sprained ankle that senior year? And for me, it's like, so I know those images are clear, and the people that he touched as well, and he never wanted anything back, right? And
never.
So for me and you, as you never expect that it's coming back, But down the road, hopefully they'll be like that. I'm feeling that now. But they thank you, and they realize all these things that you've done, because you want them to see the best, want them to be the best that they can be, But at the same time, coming back to friends, it's like, wow, you don't realize decades long,
No, and when a guy like that looks you in the eyes and tells you, this is after the fact, but he looks you in the eyes and tells you he's proud of you. I mean, that, God, right? Oh. Like that meant everything.
Yeah, it still hurts. It still hurts right now. And when Mrs. Coach announced that he expired, it was huge for me because of the impact that he had on my life, right? Yeah. And again, I hope this is hitting a lot of people, in the heart, because that's what it is. I still am emotional about it because of who he was and who he is and the kind of life that he, led. all the way to the last breath. So, I gave him some gear. He had the HollowRock, all over him, and he goes, and I showed him the old high school video that he made. And he made, man, Migz, like I said, 20 years later, you're still showing me videos of yourself.
That sounds like him. I can totally hear. Well, I told you before we went live, I told you my story, and it kills me that was the last story. We won't get into it on the air because it's a little bit embarrassing, but he just still, though, I mean, even after that, he just remembered, I just remember hearing the guys tell me he was proud of me, and he had no doubt that I was, going to be somebody and do something good. And, you don't hear those when you're 17 and you're in a locker room and you feel like you're getting your butt chewed every day. You don't hear that shit, right?
No, absolutely. I can feel you. We're vibing the same way because, realizing now in our midlife, in this phase of our life, if we don't have those people, we weren't in those dog houses, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
No, well, it's because he knew I could do better. He knew you could do better. He wasn't going to let us just half-ass it, and I think that's a metaphor for life in a lot of ways. And those are the kind of people you need in your corner,
Absolutely. It's nothing you learn from any school, right? It's character building 101 through old school ways. And for me, just huge, blessing to have those people cross paths with, because now I'm able to share that, kids and the students I teach.
Yeah, totally. And I definitely, resonate to that. Like 13, 14, 15, I guess, you teaching career too. And I did the same thing. You kind of take those traits of those people that meant so much to you and what you learned from them, and that's what you implement. And hopefully I've been able to pass that on, as I know you have too. And but it starts because someone took a chance in us, right? So it's someone saw something in us that was, that we didn't even see. And how do you ever truly thank them for that?
Absolutely.
So.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I love that, we can share. And that's why when I talked to you after like 20 years of not talking to you, it was just the same. It's like no years have passed. You know what I mean? And
teammates for life, brother. I said that when we started. Teammates for life. So
have that history. Hard to break, man. It's almost like blood.
Oh, it is. It is.
Again, with these mentors.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. It's refreshing and yet hard at the same time because, I wish I could have said goodbye the way you got to, but I'm glad you were there. I'm glad he knew how much he meant to people, towards the end. So, and Mrs. France too. I mean, I've known that lady, gosh, just about at the same amount of time as I've known you. She was my 6th grade home economics teacher, and I can still hear her little mantra of "I'm not your mama or your ama." She wouldn't let us leave any kind of messes out or whatnot, but she taught us how to cook and taught us how to do a whole lot of stuff. But I just remember her whole mantra was, "I'm not your mama or your ama." Those of us that grew up in Asia know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, so
her spunk hasn't changed over the years.
No, she's the same. I can tell just through her little. She's starting to post a little bit more on Facebook now, but she's incredibly sweet too. So. For time's sake, man, I could talk to you forever in a this won't be our only conversation on air maybe, but like what type of role does you're a father, you're a husband, you're a hell of a son, you're a brother. What type of role does family play in what you're doing these days as well, and just in daily life? I know you come from a great family, you're a family man yourself, but what's the importance in connecting everything to that? Like what role does family play with you?
It's always been a priority. I think when I married my wife, Tina, who's class of 96, she knew that about me, right? It's always going to be first. The happiness, the security, the wellness, mental and physical of the family first. Whatever you go through the challenges, you can always get through them. Families together, you're together, right? And not many people know this, but yeah, I do have I have an ex-wife and I have a daughter with my ex-wife, and at the same time, that's been challenging in itself. But life deals with different cards, at different phases in our life, but family has still always been first. And again, being able to show them, being that role model that you want to be, to give them that confidence, they can do what they want to do and be who they want to be when they grow up, and being that example. So it's always going to be number one for me. And it's always going to, super what job I want or what I should take. It's always going to affect the family.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that she was a TAS person too, alumni.
So I didn't know her. I didn't know her in high school. You know, my brother was friends with my brother Nacho at 96 was friends with her. I never talked to her in high school, even though we went there, you know, at the same time. It was only through Shanghai, you know. Again, the real big alumni contingent was there.
Small world, man. That's funny. What about I already know you're a basketball guy, but what about other passions? What are you passionate about?
Well, you know, like I said, before having kids, I was really getting into triathlon, and that's a different challenge in itself, right? Anyone can train for distance for a 70.3 Ironman, but you can't train for those conditions that you get on that day, right? And that really tested anything that I've ever trained for in my life, right? And you and I being sportsmen, we know what hard means and what it's like to train hard. But when you train for a triathlon, you're not training for you're training, you know, your mind to you know, withstand any conditions you face on that day, and being prepared to, you know, to succumb, you know, if you hit that limit, right? So if you ever trained endurance, right, or a 70 for an Ironman, you'll know the difference between what you've trained for the first 38 years of your life, you know, and then what you're training for as you know, for an Ironman or a half Ironman. And, you know, for me, some of these, I mean, these are different passions of mine, but always being somehow related to sports, I wanted something different. I wanted to see, you know, this is the peak of my athleticism, I guess, is always going to be downhill from kids or not have enough time to do it. But that really was the biggest test for me. It's like, man, you know, you really can't train for the endurance and for the conditions. And if your mind is not ready, man, it's easy to call it quits. And that just transpires. That just folds over into what you're doing in life. You know, if your mind is not ready or built to withstand some of these challenges, you can see how anyone can fold, you know, easily. That's why it's important to have that support group. That's why it's important to have, you know, the people who have been through the same, you know, experience of the TCKs to reach out to those guys, right? Because that's the mistake you're going to make. If you don't reach out when you need it, man, it's going to be a long, dark, and winding and deep road, right?
Yeah, and there's no shame in that. We all need it. You know, it's a humanistic approach to it. You know, we all need that. We all need help, right?
With kids, you know, everything. It takes a village. So for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. What's something people don't know about you?
Gosh, that's so hard.
Yeah.
I'm pretty book. You have a conversation with me for 5 minutes, with or without alcohol. I'll probably still tell you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to answer, man. But something they don't know about me that, you know, I like alone time. You know, as social as I am, as personal as I can be, I appreciate my alone time, whether that's driving, you know, aimlessly, or going on long runs or training. And that's primarily for training triathlon. That's huge amount of time that you can have on your own to think about life and think about your next move.
No,
you know?
Like that.
I guess if it's anything, it's that. It's that I do appreciate alone time, and I probably got more than I asked for, because entrepreneurship is a lot of alone time.
Yeah.
You know.
You still hooping?
I am. Yeah. You know, that'll. You know, I'll lace up shoes until I can't walk, or you know, something else happens. But for sure, you know, I mean, now the league I'm in is 6'2" and under, and 40 years and older.
Good. I can still play. Yeah, sweet. I just get it. 6'2" right here, and definitely 40 and over. So there you go. My knees don't agree with that, but the rest of me does. So yeah, it's funny because I still play. I'm like you with the baseball side of things. You have to take me off the field, literally dragging. So still softball, baseball. I occasionally a basketball game. I played in Shanghai more than anything, but my knees don't agree with me right now. So
mine will always want it. Mine will always crave it, you know. But your body will tell you, and you just got to be smarter about it these days. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the triathlon thing. I'm certainly not doing that, but I was never a runner growing up. But I've done a couple half marathons. I push myself, and that's kind of my thing. But it's not about the physicality of it. To me, you mentioned it. It's about the that's my one time where I can just be me and get in my own head and kind of clear some things up and figure some things out. But you blink and you're an hour into a run and you've kind of figured out some shit that you needed to figure out. And so I think it's definitely a good thing mentally too. I think mental, the mental game that guys our age, I never thought I'd say that, but we struggle, and I don't think there's any shame in that. But I think sometimes that's what you need. You need that alone time. You need that ability to just kind of shut it down for a minute and reload. Right. So
for sure. And that's an education that it's hard to find, like I said, you on it and make sure you listen to yourself when you need that time, to process everything that's going on, especially if you have your plate loaded. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you definitely have your plate loaded, which that's, I admire though. That's not a knock, brother. That's not a knock. I admire what you're doing. So, believe it or not, we are actually at the end of this. Again, I do apologize for those first 15 minutes. We were live on Facebook, but for whatever reason, YouTube wasn't working. But I think we got a good hour and 45 minutes on YouTube. So hopefully people were able to join back up with us. But the last question I always ask everybody, and I'm glad I asked you this off camera too, but it's the beer question. I'm a beer guy. You're a beer guy, it sounds like. And if you could have a beer or just one final conversation with somebody, either alive or no longer with us, who would that beer be with, or who would that conversation be with, and why?
Realistically, I'll go back to Mr. Franz again, right? But unrealistically, it would be Michael Jordan for sure, right? A childhood idol, and that I see now, in terms of business and what he's doing, and just basically asking, was it worth it? You know what I mean? Is the wealth worth it? Was the fame worth it? And those are the questions that who knows, if I'll ever be able to ask anyone on his level. But with Mr. Franz, I had that drink with him. And for me, it's like, it was more of a thank you than because he did a lot of things, showing by example or leading by example, as opposed to dictating anything. So we were there living in the flesh, right? So if I had an opportunity to do it again, yeah, I'd ask him and invite him again for another drink with me, to just break down his mind and think about it from a different perspective now, being, midlife and having kids of my own and coaching as well. That's the realistic side. But again, going back to Michael Jordan, it's like, man, that guy's been through so much, especially after, that series that came out. And some of those questions are like, man, was it worth it? I mean, everything that you put up with, that you sacrifice in terms of, family life and things like that. Are you happy now? And the question I've asked both of them, would be, what is success for you? When did you reach it? And when did you feel like you did find the success that you sought out to get or to find? So those are the questions I'd ask those two guys, because, I've defined success so many different ways, in the different phases of my life, right? Whether it's money, whether it's experience, whether it's, having business, but then, 20, 30 years, add another 20, 30 years, is that going to change again? How we define that. So for me right now, if you were to ask me, in terms of what success is for me, like, man, the happiness of my kids, understanding someone to rely on, and that'll show them the way properly, right? And just to do things right. And for me, it's like, I'm always going to ask questions, right? To those who've been there, those who understand, because those are the guys who know, right? They're decades ahead of us. And if I had known, at 30, what I did, and as a 20-year-old, if I had known as a 30-year-old, I mean, it totally changes everything. It totally changes everything. It's not a school will ever tell you. Sometimes your parents can't even tell you. You just have to experience it through your own life experiences. And so the definition of success is always changing, but it's like, that's a question I'm always going to ask you, whether you drive a Lamborghini or you drive a Prius, right? It's like, when will you tell yourself that you're successful, and what, how are you going to define that? And what made you come about, saying, I found the success that I want. I'm satisfied. I'm living with no regrets.
Well, I think mistakes, and we alluded to this earlier, but I think mistakes are your biggest teacher sometimes, right? You learn. And if you don't learn, then maybe sometimes you need a slap in the face and go through that whole thing all over again. But I know in my own life, my mistakes have been the biggest teachers of what I don't want to repeat, because we all have them. Anybody who tells you they've never made a mistake is full of shit, right? So it's, but yeah, I think I agree 100% with what you're saying. So that's awesome, man. And it looks like you and I both look, what does that say, Ben and Migz? Neither of you look a day over 20. I appreciate that. Those are good genes right there, right? Oh, yeah, dude, you still look like you could be playing in TAS right now, brother. So I'll take it. But yeah, it's a good old Irish genes and Filipino genes, right? So yeah, she's actually Kim is actually a former student of mine. So that's kind of cool to hear her say that. So back in the day. So well, listen, man, we have come to the end. Is there anything else you want to just quickly get out there or share? I mean, I'm going to definitely repost this and make sure your HollowRock stuff is alive and well, the websites and all that. But anything else, the floor is yours right now. Again, it's just before off camera and backstage and on camera. I just want to thank you again. But like I said, not because it just, it's going to provide you wealth or anything, but it's making you happy, a lot of people happy, and just giving people the opportunity to share and connect, right? And I think our biggest legacy, if we can just connect, find a way to connect and leave your mark somehow, and that's what you're doing, is you're connecting people, you're allowing them to share their stories and allowing them to to experience the great times and phases in our life that we've had. So again, thanks, brother. I had a great time. I appreciate that. Again, it's hard looking at myself for over an hour or having that streak, but at the same time, it's great because you've really kept it going and asked me things that are really close to my heart, really passionate about, really obsessive about. So again, if I'm able to connect with anybody who listened in through any portion of this, it's through you, through what you're doing. So again, continue doing what you're doing, even through these Corona times and after, because it's a good thing what you're doing. Right. I appreciate that, man. And that's what this is about. It's number one, it's people I respect. I'm going to have them on the show, those that I respect. But number two, everybody's got a story. We've talked about that. Ours just happens to be we grew up overseas, right? So not better, not worse, but it's our story. And it's something like you just said, if we can give back, if I can give back. But I got to be honest, and I've said this a couple of times, this show has been therapeutic for me because for so long I thought I was the only one going through stuff. I was the only one that was the outcast. I was the only one that had a hard time acclimating back stateside, and if I've taken anything away from these conversations, I mean, this is the 15th one already, and it's crazy. It boggles my mind because I thought maybe we'd do a couple of these and say la vie, right? But it's given me a chance to step back and breathe and realize I'm not alone. We've all had our struggles, and I think that's important as people, as men, as just humans. We all have our ups, we all have our downs, and it's okay to talk about it. And sometimes as TCKs, we get so caught up in the moment that we're supposed to be perceived this one way. And I struggled. I still struggle from time to time. The concept of home is still a struggle for me. But just being able to talk about these things and being able to hear other people's stories and know that they went through the same thing, I can breathe. I can breathe again. And it's kind of, that's how I view these. And it's not, I don't always want to get deep on these, but you're a guy that I think you and I have a lot of similarities in that, department. But if I can help, if you can help, if, just us talking about certain things that maybe people are going through or, don't realize they're going through it, or maybe this is an opening for them to just kind of breathe. So that's all this is about, but I truly appreciate you and what you're doing, and I respect the hell out of you, man. So just keep on keeping on, do what you're doing. Okay. Like I said, take care. Thank you so much. Absolutely, man. And just be safe, because I know you're leaving soon, and my best to the family. And please say hi to your brothers and your mom, Mr. Reuter too. I know him from the Hong Kong days, so definitely say hi to him as well. So it's a small world. It is. Amy was actually his daughter. Amy is my age. She and I were in, I think, third, fourth, and fifth grade together in HKIS. So definitely say hi. And I think she's a Cubs fan too, which in my book, she's definitely good people there. So But listen, man, I want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to all those that were watching. Again, I apologize for the technical glitch. I'll figure that out after the fact and maybe post both videos. I think we still have them. But listen, this was a treat, and just stay safe and say hi to Shanghai for me once you get there, and Taipei as well. I guess you're going there first. So two places that are a big time part of my heart, and they always will be. So those of you that are watching, thank you so much. My brother who produced this, thanks, Jay. Much appreciated. Please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. It is working now. I don't know what the hell happened, but life happens, right? This is a metaphor, I guess, for exactly what we've talked about for the last hour and a half or 2 hours, brother. So till then, it looks like one more person chimed in. Hold up. There you go, Thomas. Mr. Thomas. There you go. We want to get him on before we say goodbye. But thank you for watching, Migz. Take care of yourself, brother. It's once a teammate, always a teammate, man. You know, you're blood to me. So take care of yourself. And until next time, we're actually going to do, I think, a Saturday show this next weekend. So make sure you all pay attention and check out Facebook, check out YouTube, and I'll make sure I post this. It should be a good one. So, oh, he said one more thing. Aloha. There you go. Mr. Thomas. I know Thomas. He's a good guy. So, but until next time, Migz, take care of yourself. Say hi to everybody for me. Be safe in your travels, and we will talk to you soon, brother. Okay?
Thanks, Cap. Take care.
All right. No worries. No worries. We'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Until next time, we are done.